It's absolutely freezing this morning. There's just loads of frost about on the fields here. It's absolutely fantastic, actually. You can see such a long way across to the horizon because the sky is so clear. What I've been thinking over the last couple of days is this question of objectivity. Actually, what constitutes objective knowledge? It's something that came up in the seminar that I did at my job on Tuesday, that I spoke about on one of these videos recently. Someone asked me what objective knowledge was, or what an example of objective knowledge was, and what the ontological status was, I guess. I just found myself reciting a number of scientific, empirical facts, if you like. Boiling point of water at sea level, and atomic weight of mercury, that kind of stuff. Which is kind of an answer, but it's not. It doesn't really get to the heart of what is an objective fact. And I think where I was hoping to get to with that was a kind of an understanding of what objective means. I mean, within the context of that seminar, I wasn't really taking on objects. I was really talking about spatial extension and how those facts that we consider objective tend to be placed at some remove from the body and primarily available to the visual sense. I didn't really get into what an object is itself. I think this is something that Ray Jackendorf talks about, but I may be wrong on that. I'll have to check that when I get on. But I think part of our understanding of what constitutes an objective fact plays off a metaphor, a drawing on the schema of what we consider to be an object. And I think I've mentioned before that objects have a kind of prototypicality to them, but there's also some kind of completely embodied understandings of objects that we have, and some embodied facts about objects that we have, which map themselves onto our metaphorical understanding of articles of knowledge regarded as objects. And the one that I'm thinking of specifically is related to distance and proximity, and then ultimately to procedures by which we understand things, and procedures by which we perceive things, particularly those things we call objects. So, for example, in terms of objectivity, objects, and this proximity thing, I'm looking across the field here at a tree, and I have no trouble really calling that an object. It has all those properties that feature in sort of gestalt understandings of figures, for example. It stands out against its background when I look at it. It has a clearly defined edge. It appears kind of brightly lit, which is something that features in some gestalt understandings. It stays in my vision. It has a kind of permanence to it. And those features, or at least the significant parts of those features, are to do with the procedures of my looking at it as an object. I mean, obviously, if I had my eyes shut, it wouldn't exist at all as a visual object, but ignoring that for the moment, if I walk over to it, it's actually on the other side of a small stream, so I can't walk up to that particular tree. I'm going to pick this telegraph pole instead. If I walk up to this telegraph pole, which from this remove is similarly objective and object-like, and is an object in any meaningful sense of the word, if I do walk up to it, it stays as an object, it's still an object, yada yada yada. At a certain point, I'm not sure it stops being an object. I'm really right up against this telegraph pole now. It hasn't exactly stopped being an object, but it's certainly acquired different characteristics, and those characteristics are based upon my relationship to it, the processes I'm using to engage with it. So it's a tactile sensation, and that's also partly based on the mechanisms that I'm using the mechanisms of my own embodiment. If I was if I imagine myself shrinking down in size to really not even microscopic nanoscale, something like that, then presumably I could pass into the surface of this object and through the interstices between the molecules and kind of fly through it. So I wouldn't experience it as an object at all. So its object status is not only based on the sensory mode that I'm engaging with it in, but also the really blunt-edged facts of my embodiment, like my scale. And of course, if I was a really slow-moving object, if the lifespan of a human being was more like the lifespan of an old tree, and it took me 1,000 years to walk from where I am now to where that telegraph pole is now, it would just blink in and out of existence before I took half a footstep. So I'm not convinced it would be an object in any meaningful sense within the ontology of that kind of being. So the status of object, even the most physical of objects, is not only based on sensory mode and the sort of proximities and the impacts and those kind of relationships, but also on the facts of our being. And those things don't have to be taken into account. They're already taken into account in the recognition of objects in the physical world. So if that was applied to, if I'm using objects as a kind of metaphor for objective knowledge, then a similar kind of mapping would have to occur. The boiling point of water at sea level is objective. It's an objective fact. But objective fact in that context, just like the objective fact of real objects in the real world, is also context dependent, even though that context is massive and possibly universal. Boiling point of water at sea level demands the existence of planets and seas and the hydrogen bonds that hold molecules of hydrogen and oxygen together. It demands certain kinds of atmospheres to form an atmospheric pressure. It demands a whole understanding to do with heat and motion and time. And all those things are inexplicably bound up with the human scale being that we have, and the human scale understanding that we have. So an objective fact, like the boiling point of water at sea level, is objective. There's no doubt about that. I don't think there's any cultural relativism involved in that. But there is a kind of human scale chauvinism associated with it. There is a kind of human time scale chauvinism associated with it. There is a kind of poetic chauvinism, if you like. It depends and relies upon certain kinds of modes of understanding. It's not that those are wrong, they're just, those are the hedges which hedge in that understanding. I think that's what I meant. What do you think of this day, Pups?